Yes, my G's. Hope you're all doing wonderful. I've just thought of doing a lovely video using the LFO tool and showing you my 8 favourite ways to use it. So my 8 hot tips for using the LFO tool. You can also apply the exact same techniques on Shaperbox, or I don't know if you can do it with Duck or any like volume automation plugin, volume kind of shaping plugin that has basic settings can do it. I've just used the LFO tool for years, so I'm more comfortable with it. I don't feel the need to upgrade because it does everything that I want it to do. And I've got my 8 favourite ways to use it that I've thought of off the top of my head, things that I often do. So, number 1 is to do my kick side chain. So I've just slammed together a really quick loop. There's like a little intro so I can demonstrate some concepts, and there's a little like kind of drop loop so I can demonstrate some concepts. They don't really tie over into each other very well. Bear with me because I've just literally done this in a few minutes, but I'm just doing this to advertise the concepts of the LFO tool that are important, because they really have helped me a lot in my production. So the first one is the kick side chain, and here I'll just draw in, if I've got like a normal 2-step kick pattern like in my drums, then all I have to do is just draw in where those kicks would be. I like to draw it in directly, not sidechain triggering it, because then I can ensure that it's the volume duck is happening at the exact same time. So it's a bit fiddly when you're starting off, but you can just double click to make new points and whatever. It's the same on most plugins, and you can snap things to the grid as well. I think if you hold Alt on the LFO tool, you can snap to the grid, so it becomes easier to draw and curve things down. And so you've got no excuse to draw things incorrectly, really. I see a lot of people struggle with drawing in it, and it's not that difficult, to be honest. You curve things a little bit so you don't ever get straight, sharp cliff edges, because then that'll create a click. Because if you go from audio to no audio, you will always get a click. So anytime you're cutting off quickly, make sure to do a little bit of a curve. That's my number one kind of thing. But anyway, the kick side chain. So here's the bass, and if I was to take off obviously the drums, so you can really hear it, I just adjust. If you have the volume at 100, you can make sure it's really coming down all the way, and you can figure out, that everything's in the right spot. And then once you've got that kind of adjusted, you can mix it off. You don't have to go 100% with the kick side chain ever. So I can mix it off a bit, and that's my kick side chain. Sometimes I'll do 2 of them, like one short one long one, so I have more control of the kick. But basically, kick side chain is the number 1 way that I use the LFO tool. Next one is quite simply the snare side chain. With the kick, obviously I had it set to 1 bar, and then I had my 2 little kick points. I had to draw them both because they're on an off beat, because it's a 2-step pattern. With the snare though in drum and bass, it's always the same on the same beat, so you can just do 1 gap, and if you do the rate down at 1/2 instead of 1 bar, then obviously you can easily just make sure that you're getting the snare every time when your snare's always on the same beat. And so with the snare, I'll tend to do like a shorter gap. So I'll do it, like this, kind of just for the transient. And again, mixing the volume after that. So very similar to the kick, just, in the spot where the snare is, and with a different rate. The 2 most obvious and easy ways that everyone already knows. Okay, next, let's do hats. This is my 3rd way I like to use the LFO tool, and this is to tighten up hat loops. So if I've got a hat loop like this, a live one with loads of tail and room sound, wonderful room sound, then I can tighten it up I can select what rhythm I want with the rate. I could do like a 6th, that would be weird. I could do like 4ths, and I could bring this line here, and I could just make the hat loop into like a 4th kind of loop. I could change the whole rhythm of the kind of hat loop if I want. But if I just want to tighten it up, I'll keep it at 1/8. And then I'll just like kind of draw in a ramp down with a nice curve, and then I can mix the volume. If I want to have that tail back in, bring the volume down. If I want to have all the tail off, bring it up. It's a little bit unnatural that high, so about 80. Controlled the level of the volume of those tails, and you could automate this, so you could use that to open the hi-hats over time and close them over time. So that's a really good thing to automate as well, the volume for that one. That's number 3. Anyway, let's move on to number 4. This is pad movement. So if you've got like a pad in your intro, Let's say I've got this one here, right? It's nice how it is. It's got like a bit of life in it. But if it was, for example, a bit too static and you wanted to put some movement into it, how I would do that is I would put a little bit of volume automation in, nice slow up and down, like 2 bars or so. And then the volume, you know, I mean, if you went to 100, obviously, you get a really swelling effect, you know, but you can just do that subtly. You know, with that 40 or something like that, then you've got like a subtle swelling movement happening, and you could do the same thing with panning it a little bit as well, just for a bit of variation. But that's another way I use the LFO tool, is to put like subtle kind of swelling volume movements into things like that are too static, like a pad, for example. So that's a number 4. Number 5, we'll do the fake sidechain. So this is if I want to like introduce the kick rhythm into a sound before the drop where there's no actual drums yet. Like I've got a riser, for example, but I want to put that kind of sidechain pumping sound onto it. So I'll just do, again, my kick sidechain. So it's as if I'm cutting out where the kick it should be, but there's no kick there. But what I'm doing is I'm sort of giving a precursor to the rhythm that's going to happen when the drop happens, and then you do have that two-step kick pattern. So it's like a riser that kind of draws your attention to the fact that you're going into a 2-step rhythm. So that's like a fake sidechain effect that I do on some sounds. Okay, as I mentioned, the timbres of these sounds don't really align with my drop, but just ignore that part, you know. Once you've got that all matched up, you can use that rhythmical effect to great effect. Okay, next up, the number 6? Yeah, is double panning instruments. Yeah, this is a great one, especially for more complex arrangements. I've got an intro here where I've used a bit of orchestral sounds. I've got a violin doing a D minor chord, and I've got a trumpet doing a D minor chord, and one is on that rhythm and one is on the same rhythm, but the chords are playing, you know, one after the other. They're alternating. Okay, and so for something like this, where you've got 2 similar instrument sounds and you want to pan them and add separation to them, what I like to do often on the LFO tool is do a panning movement. This could be fast or slow, doesn't really matter, but the idea is that I'll do it on both of them in opposite directions. So I'll pan 2 instruments in opposite ways. So one will go to the left as the other one goes to the right, and vice versa. So the panning will be set to -70. Well, it doesn't have to be 70. It could be 50, 100, whatever. But and they don't have to be exact either. So, but I'm panning one of them one way, and one of them is going the other way. So one's left, one's right, at the same kind of speed. So they're going to sort of go like a nice little DNA helix from each other in the stereo field. And it's something I wouldn't do on like my really important drop sounds, like my bass or my snare or something like that. But in like on instrumental sounds, especially in the intro. It's nice because they sort of cross with each other in the stereo field, so it's just a nice way to make the sound a bit more immersive. There's a part in the middle where the volume kind of ducks down because of the effect, so I would probably automate the volume to come up there in that case to kind of make sure the whole volumes are always even. But the concept is there, and that applies, and I often do that. The next, number 7, is a Flutter Tremolo effect. This is great for stuff like white noise, but you can use it on anything. And so, for example, here, we have the white noise starting off quite normal and static, but it gets this increasing Flutter Tremolo effect coming in on it. Okay, and that's really easy to do. All you have to do is get a really, really fast triangle. You can turn the rate really up high here. And then you can automate the volume for this kind of effect, because you won't always want the flutter effect on all the time. So whatever sound you're using it on, you can just automate it to come on via the volume here. So just a fast rate with a triangle, automating the volume. That's your flutter effect. Great on white noise and many other things. That's number 7. And finally, number 8 is going to be the bass stop gap. It doesn't have to be on a bass, but it works nice on basses. And this is where I'll basically put an intentional gap in a bass sound, which is like a longer bass sound. So this one, for example, here, it's like a kind of more sustained note. I can put a gap into it. Like there it was a little bit at the start, and you can just time that gap to fit kind of rhythmically and musically with everything else. Dum, dum, dum. And, you know, it's a little bit more interesting, you know, and I don't have to go to 100%. I could do it a little bit more subtly. Just putting a little like kind of bit of funk into a bass note, which is a bit static. And the way that I do this is often I'll just draw in like a kind of gap at the start or wherever, just like one little gap, and then you can just use the phase to move around the gap. And find a position that works for you. Obviously, you could leave the volume up all the way high, so you can hear exactly where that gap should be, and then you can mix it back off to make it more subtle if you like. So that's one of my other favourite ways to use the LFO tool. So that's just 8 ways off the top of my head. And there's probably a couple more reasons or instances why I've used an LFO tool as well that I can't quite remember, but those are kind of like the main 8 reasons and hot take and tips to using the LFO tool that I enjoy. So hopefully that helps you guys out. As I said before, you can do that with any volume shaping tool. It doesn't have to be the LFO tool, but those 8 methods are always a great way to add not only a useful tool for your mix down process, but also a way to add extra creative flair into your music as well. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, my G's. Make sure you like and subscribe, all that stuff. Check out my website if you want preset packs. I do one-on-one mentorship as well, mastering services. You can always email me for more information. Have a great rest of your day. Also have a Patreon as well if you want to support there. And we've got some members only content on the YouTube channel as well if you ever want to join that. And thank you very much anyway. Have a great rest of your day. I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. Much love.